Well, it's the 29th of March 2013. This is our first day when we've been able to get out on the ground here in southwestern Ohio and do a little tilling. Over the winter, I rebuilt my 1979 Troybilt II Rotatiller. Okay, this is one of the first ones that was built to handle an 8 horsepower engine, and it's the 4-speed. It's got the high and the low here, and you can put the belts on high and low too. So it's actually a 4-speed model. After I decided to rebuild it, the engine I decided to go with was a Lombardini rated at 7.5 horsepower, and it's a 15 LD 350 ED 3B 49EO, and I got that from Small Engine Warehouse. I decided on this engine because I thought 7.5 horsepower would be sufficient, especially because they say diesel engines are very torquey. I thought I could attach it with a minimum of modification, and that proved to be the case. It was $1,300 with $60 shipping. The engine that it had on it before was a Briggs Industrial Commercial 8 horsepower. I rebuilt it about 5 years ago, and it had begun to burn a lot of oil, so I decided that I wanted to go with a new one. I looked at getting a gas engine from a Small Engine Warehouse in Indiana, and the one they recommended was the Honda 8 horsepower, and it was about $650, perhaps a little more with ship. The old engine has a 3/4 inch shaft and a keyway, and there's a big cast iron piece that actually bolts on here, which moves the engine up and down to tighten and loosen the belts. This engine has the same size shaft. The bolts that you fasten it to the tiller with are a similar size to what's over there, but they're metric. And you need a different bolt for the pulley to hold the pulley on, another metric bolt. So the shaft size is the same and the keyway is the same. It's just that you need the different bolts here. Then, because a diesel engine needs to have a mechanical shut-off, it shuts off by shutting off the fuel, you'll need another throttle cable and a throttle lever in order to operate the shut-off. And that's available online. I think they're about $10. I've seen them on eBay. So, here's what you need to do it if you want to do this. You'll need 4 M8 by 125, 1.25 by 40 millimeters hex head bolts and lock washers. Okay, these 4 bolts hold this casting to this engine, 1, 2, 3, 4. You'll need 1 5/16 24 by 2 inch hex head bolt with a lock washer. That's here, and that holds the pulley onto the crankshaft of the engine. You'll need 2 6/32 by 2 inch machine screws with 6 nuts and flat washers. That's to connect these, the throttle lever and the shut-off lever. And I'll tell you a little more detail about that. I can do that right now, actually. Can I, or shall I just go through this first? Yep. So, the way I did this is I took the long bolt up through the lever here and this lever here. You can see it better on this one. Then I heated it with a torch. I fastened it in with a nut. Then I heated it with a torch and bent it. You see the heat mark? And then I used my 2 nuts and 4 lock washers to fasten onto the cable. And I also heated the end of the cable, and I bent that with a pair of needle nose pliers to make a loop. So that's how that works. I held these on with a couple of hose clamps, and something else you'll need is a throttle lever and a cable. Like I said, that's online. Get them online. And you need 2 1032 by a 1/2 inch pan head machine screws here and here. So you tap, drill the hole the tapping size, and then you use your tap, and then you tap the handlebars and screw it on. So there we are, there's that. Okay, something else you're going to need is another spring here for the engagement mechanism. Because if you just use the one spring, the extra weight of the engine means that it won't stay in forward gear. But with this extra spring, it holds the roller underneath the cam, and it seems to work fine. Okay, something else you'll need is a selection of a 3/4 inch washers or spacers to put between the pulley, the engine pulley, and the new engine, because it isn't configured exactly like this. You have to make up some of this distance, and you have to use enough spacers so that the pulley is in line. Okay. You need that spacer or spacers. You just have to add spacers behind the pulley until your belts line up. And I don't know exactly what you need. I forget what the width that I had to make up. I think it was about 140 thousandths. That's just a guess. So if you had a selection of washers or spacers on hand, that would make the job go a little better. You'll need, because of this engine, is so much heavier than the one it replaced. This is 92 pounds with oil and diesel fuel. And this one is about 60 pounds with oil and gasoline. So you need to also figure out, since this engine is so much heavier, how you're going to keep the tines in the ground with all this extra weight up here. So what I decided to do was, well, cut out 4 5/16 steel plates, which are they each weigh about 10 pounds, and I bolted them in through the tine guard. And
you can tip that up so you can see it.
And that gives a lot of nice weight on the tines, because if you put a heavier engine on one of these tillers than it came with, it just doesn't work as well. It works much nicer if you have good weight on the tine end to keep the tines in the soil. So this is the first time I've used it in the garden. I'm hoping it's going to use a lot less fuel. I'm hoping it's going to last longer than the gasoline engines have. And I guess there's a possibility that I can use, biodiesel in it. So that's some things I'll look into. And I'll show you it. You're working now. It's a lot harder to start when it's cold than it is when it's warm. And I found the best way to get it running is to pull it until you hear the injector inject the diesel, and then, you know, to pull it quite hard and get it running. So I'll show you it. I'll show you it running here. Okay, this is a little modification that I do on my tillers because I find rocks and bits of metal in the ground and whatnot. So I just, you know, bolt an old ammunition box on there, and I put rocks in it as I go. That's one of my favorite aspects, is how it sounds like an African queen when it's idling. Okay, good luck, and if you decide to do this, I hope it goes well. I'll update this video at the end of our season and let you know how the diesel engine worked out. Thanks for watching. Bye.